Welcome to Speak Up, the television arm of Freemasonry New Zealand. I am your host, Barry Rushton. My special guest this evening is retired vicar Ivan Smith, who will talk to us about organised religion and Freemasonry. Our second guest, following on from our Orewa guest last week, is Peter Packard, also from Lodge Orewa. He will tell us a project that the Lodge is doing to support our young children and the problems they are having with reading and writing. Following that, of course, will be our regular contributor, rounding out the show, Graham Houston, who will tell us about the life and times of another famous Freemason. My first guest this evening, it's a great joy to welcome Reverend Ivan Smith. It's great to have you on the show. Honestly, I've been trying to get you on the show for a long, long time. Everybody in our audience can see that you're an ordained vicar. You're retired now, but you're so active in Freemasonry. You've been a master 5 times in 3 different lodges, I believe. You're a current member in 6 lodges already. You've been a past Grand Chaplain. You've been very active. In fact, I would say too active. How come you've been so involved in Freemasonry?
Have you been talking to my wife?
She called me just before we came on air.
Well, I cannot argue with your statement. Ruth speaks the truth.
But you're so active. I mean,
yes,
yes. So why do you do it? I mean, when I say that, you do it for a great reason. What is that reason?
I believe in the principles of Freemasonry. They are manifest, the truthful, eternal.
Yeah.
When I was 15 years old, I decided it was time I learned something about Freemasonry. So I carefully cut the lawns, I manicured the edges, I swept the paths, I washed the car, I leathered the seats, I blackened the tire. And on Sunday afternoon I thought, I got me Dad in a good mood, I'll go and ask him. Wow. Dad was in the garden and I said, Dad, tell me something about Freemasonry. I was 15, earnest.
And he was a Freemason, obviously, yes.
Yeah, oh yes. He finished the row he was digging in the garden, drove the shovel into the ground, dusted his hands, and says, I can tell you this, Freemasonry is the greatest ethical society you'll ever find in the world. Picked up the shovel and carried on digging.
Keep going.
That was it.
Is that true?
I wanted to know,
wow.
And Dad was faithful to his obligation, as we say.
Yeah.
He wouldn't speak.
Wow.
I knew my older brother was in the lodge.
Okay.
But my time hadn't come, in Dad's opinion.
But what fantastic words your father said.
Absolutely right.
I mean, really.
Yeah. Oh, they're still there, aren't they? Look, riveted.
Right. Wonderful.
Yes.
And so then, of course, that just, over time, you just got to the point where you could become a Freemason.
It took a few years.
Yep.
I was not initiated until I was interviewed when I was 49.
That's right.
And then 50.
Yeah. Which is quite a big gap from your interest to...
It is. But things had to happen. The time had to become right.
I wanted to touch on this,
yes.
and I'm not sure whether I want to or not, because it's a no-brainer really when we talk about it. For years, there has been a number of religious groups have said, oh, don't ever be involved in Freemasonry, it's something terrible. Now, we know that's total misinformation, because really, Freemasonry itself has, as its sole foundation stone, the fatherhood of God. I mean, that's really, you have to believe in a supreme being.
Yes.
But Freemasonry is different than being any kind of a religion, isn't it? We both know that. How would you explain it to the people, based on what you know and believe and love? How could we put this dichotomy to bed once and for all?
I think the answer lies in the social history of the craft itself, of Freemasonry, and the church. They were never good bedfellows from the very beginning.
No.
Yet the churches that, as they emerged from the Middle Ages into the Victorian period, the churches wouldn't have existed without the Freemasons working on them.
Well, that's the truth.
That's the irony.
Yes.
It's really quite funny, but sad. But the complex issues, our founding fathers who created Freemasonry in the 1717 documentation in London, the Goose and Iron, the 4 pubs, they had horror, absolute horror of the reality of their immediate history, the effect of the religious wars that were then.
Yeah.
We think we got religious wars now, and we have, but then you couldn't go anywhere in London without the stench of the fires.
I know.
It was terrible.
And any
The
belief
horrors.
and any belief in anything
Yep.
that wasn't sort of sanctioned by the church at that stage, you were talking heresy. You were, you know.
Yes, the field was rife.
Absolutely.
But Freemasons, they owed their formation and the power that they have as a society for good from the Renaissance, the renewal that happened at that period, the emergence of the scientific method, and the quest for good men to improve themselves. But they could not afford to join the Royal Society as it was. So as an output of that, the Freemasons emerged. And good men could become Masons and follow the same trail.
Quite so.
Could improve their language, improve their manners.
You see, in the olden days, of course, the Freemasonry had the stonemasons, and they had the tools workers, and they had the wood crafters.
Yes.
And so even though those symbols are still within the Freemasonry lodge meetings, it's actually the moral virtues displayed by those tools that we are more to regard today.
Yes.
It's the you know the strength of the workmen using those tools is the same thing that we developed in the character of ourselves.
But also in the language, the real flower of that Elizabethan period that produced the kind of English that an ordinary man could say and know that he was important. You know that he was worth something because he could believe the words.
Yeah, exactly.
The marvellous, those morals that you well described of the working tools are the best things we learn.
Aren't they indeed?
Yes.
Aren't they indeed?
Yes.
You see, a number of years ago, when I was young, the Beatles were out. I'm changing subject slightly now.
Go for it.
And all I wanted to do was be in a band.
Yes.
What took you down the theological pathway? When would you think, this is what I want to do for my vocation?
When I was 7 years old, I was a choir boy in St. Peter's Parish Church, Gonville, Wanganui. We had a strong bond between ourselves and this primary school next door, and a couple of us managed to get probably half of our class in the choir. We actually created our own initiation rites. I mean, we could have been little Masons, but we didn't know it.
True. Wow.
Yeah. But because of that, a camaraderie grew, which was stronger than anything else that I can remember as a child. We were the team.
Wow.
And on a particular Sunday, Sisters of the Holy Name, an Anglican order of nuns, visited our parish with a film, an 8mm.
I know them well.
A little wee screen about this big.
Exactly.
It was a film showing the work that they were doing in the Pacific Islands on the Lazaratos, as we call them, the leper colonies.
Wow.
And I was riveted at 7 years old. I could not believe that anybody could have such love,
Compassion,
faith, hope, passion to do what they were doing for these
Poor
people whose lives were deformed and made them into something better. It was, for me, in our terms, I guess it would be like having Mother Teresa of Calcutta as your friend.
Yeah.
And that changed my attitude. I knew that this was something I had to follow.
So straight from college after you
I've jumped the years, yes.
You jump a few years,
Yes.
and then you studied. Where did you go?
Otago,
Otago.
and I did not cope with the translation well.
Wow.
From
Wonderful.
secondary school to Otago University, I wasn't in that group. It took a few years for my maturity to develop, and I finished up properly educated.
Was the theological college that you studied in Dunedin part of the University of Otago?
No, it was part of the Selwyn College which are halls of residence. It was the Anglican form. The main training for my priesthood was at St John's College in Auckland.
Okay, great.
And John Simpkin was the bishop,
Oh, I know that name.
a famous Mason.
So when you ordained, did
Yes.
you obviously you went to a number of different parishes? Is there
Yes, yes.
an area
Training.
Yeah, or even when you finally did you
Yes.
you took over your own parish at some stage?
Eventually, Bombay,
Bombay.
the South Auckland
Wow.
Hills, yes, Bombay, my first parish.
Pleasant memories. Good.
Oh, excellent, excellent, excellent,
No regrets, obviously.
yes. That was my first approach to become a Mason.
Okay.
It was made to me then.
Well, that's the point I was going to ask you too
Yes,
now,
yes.
is because you mentioned before that, yes, you had this great epiphany to ask your father, you know,
Yes.
about what it was all about, you know, and he gave you the best words you can ever possibly give you, and that was it. But then, you know, almost sort of, 43 years later,
Correct.
you then decide, right, I'm going to do it. So what was the thing that finally tipped you into saying, right, I'm going to join?
It was a different kind of event altogether. It happened in Auckland, and I found my own brother, Peter,
Mhm.
a Mason many years before me, in distress,
Wow.
critical distress. And I offered him the home that I had then, which was looking after the vicarage at St Peter's Takapuna. Peter
Okay.
then turned round one night and said, I think it's time you join my lodge.
Wow.
And just as I can remember my father's word, I can remember mine. I was wondering what you were going to ask me, I said.
Is that right?
That's
Great.
right, yes.
And you did.
I was initiated into Lodge Iraqi 270, which was kind of remarkable for us, for me, and for quite a few Masons, because Iraqi was a power board lodge.
Ah.
A lot of the founding
Power
men and workmen who supported strongly belonged to the Auckland Electric Power Board. In my early training, to get the fees together to pay for things, I was a linesman for the What's the Matter Electric Power
I
Board.
feel a song coming on, linesman. And see, your other brother and a friend of mine, Ken, he is
Yes.
also a
Yes.
Freemason in
Yes.
the lodge that I'm a member of, and
Yes.
he's a dear, dear friend to me, your brother.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know Peter. I think Peter's passed, is that correct?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
oh yes,
Um, But I know your other brother very well, and I like him a lot.
yes.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for being a guest. I've been looking forward to this for some time because I enjoy your company. I love it when I go down to the Waikato and you're there. It's always a great pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Well,
for
I
being a
can
guest.
say this to you: keep the faith.
And I'll certainly take that on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. In keeping with our last week's program, we had two members of Lodge Orewa on the program, and today we have a third. Peter, it is great to see you, my friend. Peter
Thanks, Barry.
Packard
Thanks,
from
Barry.
Lodge Orewa again.
Great.
Peter, I know you're involved in the charity side of Lodge Orewa. The thing that strikes me, there's about 300 or more different charities any person or lodge can support. We know that Lodge Orewa is in Orewa, which is north of Auckland, regarded pretty much as a bit of a sleepy old little town, So what would make you choose a project, if I can call it that seems to benefit younger children perhaps, and not so more say like a hospice or something like that, even though that's wonderful as well. What's the secret? Why have you chosen this one for the children?
Well, Barry, before I shifted into Orewa, I was living in Whangarei, and up there our lodge got very involved with this program to help dyslexic children.
Right.
The problem was massive because up to 30% of children in primary schools have huge problems with reading.
Wow.
30%. And so we were very successful up there in launching the program, and when I came to Orewa, the benefits that I learnt from Whangarei came down to Orewa, and I put it to our lodge there, and they said, yeah, let's run with it.
Great, because I think it's it may not be well known that even in a general population there's anywhere from about 3 to 7, maybe even 20% of people who do suffer from a dyslexic situation, correct?
Yeah, the figures that are out there are that there's 20% of primary school children in New Zealand are dyslexic. Now that's a huge figure, and it doesn't rank very well overseas. You know, we're right at the bottom of the heap.
And I know we hate to mention this, but I have known as well in the research that even unfortunately in our prison populations, the percentage is quite high, correct? Higher than we would ever think or want it to be.
Yeah, the figure's between 40 and 50% of them.
Just incredible.
And that's well above a lot of other countries, so we don't rate really very highly.
There does seem to be a bit of a misconception, doesn't there, that people who are dyslexic are either slow learners or they just sort of, they're a bit sort of behind and backward in their reading. Maybe even their intelligence level is perhaps not as high as others. But in actual fact is quite incorrect, correct?
It's very incorrect, because dyslexic children actually can be very, very bright. It's just that they think differently to you and I. We use the left side of our brain, which is pictorial is on the right side, which is what the dyslexic people have. So it's the verbal side is on the left-hand side.
So they're basically just wired different, right? Most people do it on the left side because that's the verbal side.
Sure.
They do everything pictorially, and so consequently it's confusing for them initially, correct?
And they can be very bright children.
Oh, and creative, I believe.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I went to a school once and I saw a fellow there who's quite dyslexic, and he was doing 3D drawings of ships and things, which was absolutely magnificent.
Fantastic.
Some other people may become very good at some musical instrument or a dancer, but they're dyslexic.
I think we can see, can't we, that if kids start getting behind at school, right, it starts to snowball, right? They think they're not worth anything, or potentially not worth anything. They get out there and into communities, they're not keeping up with anybody. You can really see how that snowball would go down the hill.
They become very frustrated when they fall behind their classmates, and then often their behaviour becomes a bit off, and so that's when they get into real trouble, not only in the school but outside the school.
Quite so. You see, I do know that there are a number of programs out there. I believe the Dyslexia program started in the USA at about 1984, and there are a number of them out there, I know that. But I do know this also, that this Dyslexia program is apparently the best computer-assisted learning tool on the market today, correct?
That's right. I believe that it's research-based, and that means that right around the world, these researchers are working and feeding information into the dyslexia people, and so it can be included into programs in Australia, New Zealand, or wherever they may be.
Without getting us bogged down, and I know we could, how does the program work? What happens?
Well, it's a system whereby it's a sequential system, whereby a child sits down in front of a computer and has to work his or her way through each of the sections. And as they proceed, the computer will tell them that yes, that's right or that's wrong. If it's wrong, they have to stay there until they get it right, and which can be quite frustrating. But the children just seem to love sitting down behind a computer. It's almost like a computer game, and so they relate to it very quickly and get hooked on this program.
So I guess then from that, then either the teachers who are perhaps monitoring them or keeping an eye on them can actually judge their progress, right? And they can then say, okay, this child is going great, we will now up it a bit or move them into this next level. I guess that's how it works.
That's right. One teacher can look after 10 or 12 children on the program, and the teacher can monitor the progress of this one and the next one, and so at the end of a 30-minute session they can say, look, little Johnny there, you can't progress further, you've got to stay there and learn, and develop improving systems, and so that's a measure of how much progress the children are making on the program.
Fantastic. Now I know that you, I'll say tripped over this, and that's a bit unfair because you were sort of called to help and another chap to promote this idea. You found it first of all, or exposed to it, up in Northland, when you were up in the Northland area, right?
Yes.
And you set out then to actually raise a significant amount of money, which you did. I think it was $170,000 plus, right?
Yes.
To actually get this into schools, right? And to get it accepted into schools that really wanted it.
That's right. When we first started the project, we we thought that maybe we should just target primary schools. But we quickly learned that it was not too difficult to raise a lot of money, we got some Masonic support, subsidised money, which was good. And so then very quickly we learned that we should aim beyond the primary schools into secondary schools. We got it into 28 primary schools, which was just about 1,000 pupils up in Whangarei and further north. And then we decided to get it into the secondary schools as well, another 5. We ended up with about 1,500 children that we were looking after through this program.
So you shifted down to Paradise, which is over here, right, or the Hibiscus Coast, where they say it's perfect one day and marvellous the next, whatever they say. And you managed to twist the arm of the lodge master down here and the brethren say, come on guys, let's get this going down here. Would that be fair? No regrets?
No, I was very happy, and I was delighted to think that when I put that proposition forward, that the lodge jumped at the idea, and so I then started contacting schools in the area, and currently coming forward we've got 15 schools now in the general area of Orewa and Whangaparoa, which is not bad going.
That's good.
And most of those are primary schools. Most of the real need is in the semi-rural, lower decile schools, where they haven't got the money. A lot of the bigger schools get children in from overseas, bring in a lot of money to that school, so they don't need a lot of support.
So I guess then that would be part of a wish list. If you were going to put a wish list together on what you'd like to have or to do that would see this dyslexia program spread faster, further, where would you see the major push needed to be? Would it be needed to have more commitment by the teachers, more commitment by the parents, more commitment financially? Where's the wish list for this?
I came down to Orewa with my wife, and I had a wish list about this project. And the wish list was, and it actually included the idea that, hey, Freemasonry could take this nationwide. We've seen the problem and dealt with it up in Northland. We're starting to do something around our general area. Let's take it to other areas of New Zealand. Now, on that one, already we have been contacted by 2 other Freemason groups, one in Hawke's Bay and the other in Golden Bay down at Takakawai. So it does say that it is possible, but I guess I haven't had too much energy to develop it.
Everything has its total time and place, for sure, and maybe it's happening, Peter, I know that you joined Freemasonry at a fairly sort of late age, and I know that you were doing other things prior to that. What was the trigger that brought you into Freemasonry? What was the thing that you said, I'm going to join this group?
Barry, I had a background of community service. I was a member of Round Table for many years, and that took me overseas, and I could see the real benefits of getting behind projects to help other people in our community or offshore communities. And this was very dear to my heart. So when I was 40, I had to leave Round Table because that's just what they told me I had to do. And it was very soon after that I joined Freemasonry.
Well, we're glad you did join, mate. Thank you very much. I hope we can do something to promote the dyslexia program out there, and I'm sure we will. Exposure like this adds to the actual demand. So, good on you, Peter. Thank you for being a guest. And our final guest tonight, of course, is our regular contributor, Graham Houston. Graham, good to see you.
Thank you, Barry.
Mate, in keeping with the rest of the show, I believe you've got a man of cloth that you would like to talk to us about tonight.
Yes.
Tell me more.
The very Reverend John Reimer.
Oh, well known in Auckland.
Dean of Auckland.
Known, yes.
Well known in Auckland, and even some think he was a New Zealander, but he was not. He was an Australian. He was born in Townsville.
Not an Australian.
He was born in Townsville, Queensland, Australia, in 1924. He was educated at the University of Queensland and went on to become ordained in 1948 as a priest in the Anglican Church. He served at Armidale and he served as a vicar at a little place called Below Ula for about 5 years. It's a little place.
What is it again?
You get asked that. Below Ula.
Oh, very good.
And it's a population of about 6,000, just under 6,000. He was the vicar there. It's in what they call the Banana Shire of central Queensland. And he was there and then moved across to Christchurch. He became the principal of Christchurch College and also the honorary canon of the Canterbury Cathedral.
Oh.
From there he came up to Auckland, where he became the Dean of Auckland, and he built a real affinity with the Holy Trinity Cathedral. And he would not say, but I'm saying it for him, that it was vision and drive that probably really led to the completion of the cathedral complex up there, the building of the nave, the completion of the Gothic, and the shifting of the Cathedral of the Church of St Mary from the other side of Parnell Road across to Parnell.
I saw that happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was tremendous opposition to the moving of that building. A lot of people thought at that stage it was the building of a monument rather than the completion of a church. In fact, I have heard it said that the Gothic, with its corrugated ends to cover up the uncompleted work, was often referred to as Rymer's hen house, but I'm not quite sure if that was true, but that's it. But he saw the building of the nave, the completion of the Gothic, the shifting of the church across, as building a cathedral of ecumenical hope for all churchgoers. He joined the Lodge of Peace in the
Great lodge to
80s.
join.
A great lodge. And while he was master of that lodge, he signed the petition which saw the formation of the Lodge of the Liberal Arts number 500, of which he became a member. But an interesting thing happened to him when he was in Lodge of Peace. He was appointed as the Grand Chaplain, and he was appointed while he was a Master Mason. And as you know, that doesn't happen. No. So the Lodge of Peace conferred upon him past master status, so he could accept that role.
Wow.
But he felt an obligation that he needed to become a master, a real master, rather than just a past master. And so he became master of that lodge, of the Lodge of Peace. And during that time, he signed the petition for the formation of the Liberal Arts Lodge. He went on to become a past Grand Warden as well.
Great.
Past Provincial Grand Master Neil Ingram speaks of John Rymer and saying that he was an inspiration to the people. He was an inspiration to the people of Auckland, and he was an inspiration to Freemasons. And as Neil says, he was a great mentor to have. Now, when he retired, he became the chaplain of the Edgar Faber Chapel, which was built by the Freemasons, and he remained in that role for some considerable time. When they dedicated the organ in 2003, they dedicated it to the very Reverend John Rymer, Dean of Auckland, and an inspiration and a driving force in Auckland.
What a great choice, mate. What a great choice. Dean Rymer, I do remember him. I really do, you know.
Many members of the lodge will remember Dean Rymer. They'll know him by name. Many, though, will know him on a personal basis.
Great choice again. Thank you, Graham. I'll see you next week, my friend. Great. Well, that's our show for this week. Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you'd like to know anything about Freemasonry, please do go to the Freemasons website, which is freemasonsnewzealand.org.nz, or otherwise just call the telephone number listed on the screen. Until I see you again, have a great week.